first of all, I was trading messages with Marc last night. He's very excited about this. Why is he doing this?
So
why are they doing this, I should say, because Lynne is involved as well.
Yeah, and I think that's crucial. Marc Benioff has tried to pitch himself as a civic leader, and I think he really wants to be part of the conversation when it comes to criticism of President Trump and his policies, or when it comes to sharing his progressive values. He tends to be pretty outspoken. I think one of the tenets of that is he appreciates a free press. Right now, people on the left tend to lionize the press as an important check on power. And I think that when you see an institution like Time Magazine, he thinks this is a perfect brand, this is a perfect opportunity to save a news outlet that has done really great work and give him an additional platform.
Here's a tweet from Marc Benioff. The power of Time has always been in its unique storytelling of the people and issues that affect us all and connect us all. A treasure trove of our history and culture. We have deep respect for their organization and are honored to be stewards of this iconic brand. John, this as Jeff Bezos has bought the Washington Post, you've got Lorraine Powell Jobs and the Atlantic. As Nico said, Marc Benioff and many of these tech magnates not shy at all about their political views. What does that mean for the publication and for the media?
I don't know if this has much to do with politics, other than there's been a huge Trump bump that the Washington Post has gotten from aggressively covering the goings-on in the administration. Same with the New York Times. And Time Magazine has missed out on that almost completely because they haven't had the resources to do aggressive reporting and investigation. And this may give them a chance to get back in that game.
The relevance of the magazine, though, has shifted, John. How much do you believe that Time Magazine and the Time cover still matters?
The Time cover, interestingly enough, seems to have far more impact than the magazine itself. It's still got a lot of cultural currency. The president cares a lot about how many covers he's been on, but people talk about it a lot. And I think they could do a lot more with it and leverage that power. I think that this is really kind of a Moneyball play by Marc Benioff. That is, he understands the power of artificial intelligence really well. Salesforce has a very sophisticated in-house AI program. And I wouldn't be surprised that he's looking, if he were looking at Time Magazine as a very powerful brand that, given the proper dose of artificial intelligence, enabling it to really understand its consumers and find new audiences, could become even more valuable over that next 20 to 25 year period that the current editor, Ed Felsenthal, said Benioff has been encouraging them to think.
Nico, do you think the Benioffs will run this as a business or as a loss leader?
I think that the Benioffs are going to stay away from operational matters. They said they won't be making any editorial decisions. I think at the same time it's going to be important to them to make sure that Time has all the resources needed to go forward. They know that they don't have the expertise. They're still partnering with Meredith on making sure that distribution and advertising will go forward. But regardless of any of the details, how it plays out, this is really the debut of Marc Benioff in some ways on the national stage. Salesforce can be so inside baseball as an enterprise company. People around the country today are talking about Marc Benioff.
And he has, as you said, been not just pretty outspoken, but very outspoken about his politics, about things like equal pay. He's been very critical of Facebook, for example. John, if the Benioffs are saying they're not going to get involved in editorial decisions, do you think that's really possible in this day and age? That they and their politics and their personal views could have no impact on the publication?
I think it's possible and critically important for the credibility of the publication, and they probably know that better than anyone. We've got the example of Bezos with the Washington Post. There hasn't been any evidence of him tampering on the editorial side. I think there'd be a lot of noise, starting with the Time Magazine employees themselves, if there were any kind of attempted interference. He knows what he's bought. He's bought one of the beacons of independent journalism that has fallen on harder times lately, and if he really wants to revive it, he's going to just arm them with the tools they need. They can now afford to triple the size of their Washington reporting staff, for example, and they can know more about their audience than they've ever known before, so they can invest in technology in order to get there. If he's smart, that's what he's going to focus on and not worry about editorializing too much.
John, John, would you expect to see this when it comes to other publications? There certainly are other struggling publications with iconic brands out there. Fortune comes to mind. Will we see more of this?
I think we will, because I think it's very appealing on an emotional or personal level, but it also provides a legacy of sorts. You know, when you've made a few $100 gazillion, you're probably sitting there thinking about what it's all going to add up to and what impact you might have. And especially for people who understand technology and its potential to take brands to the next level and beyond, it may become irresistible for them to adopt one of these struggling publications, and there are more to come. I mean, we see every day, you know, these giants of publishing just looking to sell off individual titles. So I think there are sellers for sure in the marketplace, and I do think that there will be more buyers in the vein of Benioff.
Now, Bezos's purchase of the Washington Post, Nico, has not been without controversy from within and, you know, outside the organization as well. And the president has certainly trained his ire on the Washington Post and on Jeff Bezos. Could we see something similar happen here?
If it does happen, I don't think Marc Benioff would mind, given his criticism of President Trump and the fact that he hasn't been on the president's radar. But I think the big distinction that I see between those two is that Amazon permeates, you know, every aspect of American life these days. And when it comes to Salesforce, it is a much smaller player, and he bought, you know, a national news magazine rather than a tech magazine, for instance. But this is ultimately a prestige play for him. You know, this is a man who just sponsored a new transit center in San Francisco to be named after his business. His company has the naming rights of the largest office tower that is west of the Mississippi. You know, this is a man who really appreciates prestige and has a personal family history of these renowned folks crucial in the development of San Francisco.
John, quickly, you think we could see a similar pattern in TV?
Well, that would be interesting. You know, maybe broadcast TV, which is the area of the business that is struggling most, or some of these cable channels. I hear from well-to-do individuals all the time who are interested in buying a cable TV network, because that's a tougher business these days. But you know, the Time magazine itself was a bit of a vanity play once it got going. Not at the beginning; it was a true startup back in the 1920s. But you know, eventually, Henry Luce was using it as a vehicle to enhance his own reputation and to push his own politics. So the more independent-minded publication we know today is very different from the one that Luce ran when he was alive.
Right.